like one of these light bulb moments where you kept late at night of imagine if we could have yoga and mindfulness in all schools everywhere for children everywhere.
Mindful Happy Kids, created and narrated by Dr. Elisabeth Paige, consists of interviews with children's authors and poets, kids, and illustrated and narrated musicians by Dr. Elisabeth Paige, consists of yoga and mindfulness children's authors and poets, and Dr. Paige also reads from all children's books on compassion, yoga and mindfulness practitioner, mindfulness and yoga. Dr. Paige also reads from her own children's books meditation on compassion or pet-centered meditations, mindfulness and yoga as part of the video. Pippi the puppy and Dr. Paige practice meditations or pet-centered meditations.
Giselle Charlot, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
It's a pleasure. It's so fun.
Why don't you take a couple minutes to introduce yourself?
So I am a trained yogi, I'm a parent, and I'm the owner of Kids Yoga Stories, where we help grown-ups teach yoga mindfulness to children in a fun and easy way.
How did you start your yoga practice?
So my mom, when I was little, I grew up in the middle of Canada, and my mom used to practice yoga on TV. Back in the day, we lived on a farm and there was a little television. There was a German woman she used to watch every day. And so she would practice yoga with us. Then fast forward in my 20s, I used to live in Guatemala as a teacher, and I'd come home. And every time I came home, I joined my mom at her yoga classes, right? And then I moved to Sydney, Australia. And there I kind of found my yoga home. I was at that age, my late 20s, where I was looking for something exercise, but also spiritual, just to expand my body, mind, and spirit. And so I found a yoga studio that had $5 classes. And so from there, I was taking classes after my work a few times a week. And then I took yoga teacher training. And then when I did yoga teacher training, I had this moment of like one of these light bulb moments where you kept late at night of imagine if we could have yoga and mindfulness in all schools everywhere for children everywhere. So I've been teaching internationally for a number of years, by this point, a decade. And I just, I'd seen even at that time, 20 years ago, right, the obesity or illiteracy or children unmotivated to learn, how do we engage children in learning? So sort of like what you're doing with your meditations, right? How do you involve pets in the meditations? How do we involve children with meditations? How do we involve adults and teachers in an engaging way? So from there, I started to write my yoga stories. And then now here we are 10 years later, and we have this amazing business.
It is an amazing business. I've gotten a whole bunch of your products and they're amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we love it.
It's really broad. You really have covered a broad spectrum of the different types of yoga you can do and different ways of presenting it so that it's accessible to kids and families. I really enjoy it. Actually, can you do me a favor and walk me through a yoga card?
Sure. So I have at my fingertips here, I have our mindfulness cards and I have our breathing cards. So for example, breathing cards, right? So the benefit we hear from our customers is, these are nice and easy, right? They're just the cards you can stick in your purse, in your pocket, wherever, or in the classroom. And then there's instructions, there's an index of all the different breaths. And then you've got a picture of the breath with the instructions on the back. So for example, right now I have an 11-year-old daughter who's on the spectrum. She has ADHD. So at nighttime, it can be difficult for her to wind down and, the monkey mind and the revving engine. And so we've been using these just in her room and picking one, right? And then we do it together. So that's kind of how we do that. With the mindfulness one, similar, you can just grab from the pack. There might be some tips, we use sensory, we use movement, we use meditations. So there might be just ones that you want to grab and practice. So those are those ones. Do you mean the yoga cards that are all themed as well?
Sure, you want to talk about the themed ones? That's great.
Yeah, so we have lots of different themes. And so our idea as a primary school teacher, the way I was taught to teach, and that's how I taught, is through themes. So we've got everything from, and a lot of it was habitat originally. So it was ocean and beaches and jungles and forests and all those kinds of things. So what we do is we match a keyword in the forest, for example, it might be an animal or a tree or nature, to a yoga pose, so that the children are in a yoga posture, but imagining that they are, a tree or a flower or, something in the garden or whatever. So they're using your imagination and creativity. And this, when I first started doing this with the yoga poses matching with keywords, it was because 5,000 years ago, the Indian sages in India were up in the mountains, and how the yoga postures were first created was looking at their surroundings. So tree pose is from tree, right? Mountain pose was standing steady. And all those postures were so that they were able to sit for long periods of time in meditation. So meditation and breathing is the ultimate goal, right? But we use the yoga postures to move our bodies so that we're able to sit for longer.
Great. So for a themed one, walk me through what a set of cards would be for a themed one. So say we'll take a holiday.
Right. I don't have one at my fingertips. They're in my behind me there. So holiday might be, for example, a Valentine's Day. So Valentine's Day, we'd have some heart opening postures, some back bends. So we're opening our heart. For Christmas, we have some Diwali. For Hanukkah, Christmas might be the lights of Christmas. So they might be acting out anything from the Christmas tree to the fire log, to opening presents. For Diwali, again, those are the light. So I just take or St. Patrick's Day, or what else do we have? 4th of July, or Canada Day, or England, or Mexico for Cinco de Mayo. So we just take that a particular theme, and then I just look at what are some keywords and what makes sense to match them up to poses, so that they're experiencing those holidays through movement. So a lot of our children, right, is to have them embody what they're learning, right? So it's one thing to be sitting in a classroom or in a studio or home, right? But another thing to be learning through our bodies, right?
Can you talk about how the kids would learn about international issues, international countries and landmarks through the international yoga cards?
Yeah. So we have some on Paris, go on an imaginary trip to Paris or New York, or
London is one of my favorite.
Oh, London. Yes. Yeah. So my parents are from England. So that was a good one for us. And that was, so how we get the themes, the type of themes, some of them are just for my own passion and excitement teaching, but also people will write in. So that one in particular, one of our customers, Cheryl, emailed as a preschool yoga teacher and said, my students love going on trips to Paris and New York. Can you make some cards for those? So that's how that idea came to be. But I'm really passionate about this idea of pretend journeys, right? And it has us take ourselves out of especially with COVID, I think too, we're so insular, right? And where we are. And so imagine ourselves going to these other places in the world. And I feel like that brings a sense of empathy for different cultures and tolerance for different folks, right? And an understanding of how people are and what their needs are and what it's like for other places. So for the Paris, for example, with the Paris cards, you'll be acting out what you see and do in Paris, but also, you might play music, French music, or you might offer some treats. So thinking about the senses, so to make it more of a holistic experience, not just the yoga postures, but really immerse the children in the whole experience of, imagine if we went to Paris for the afternoon.
The pictures are great. And I noticed you always start out with instructions to the parents or to the teachers.
Yeah.
Sort of how to do yoga, like some sort of ground rules in a way.
Yes.
And how to do yoga.
Yeah. Ooh, let me pull them out here. So for example, here's some sweet treats. So these are the ones I showed you, we have printed as well as digital, but these These ones here are digital, and then I have them printed. So that drawer I just opened up, that's full. So we have that many. I don't know, 50. I don't know how many we have, but these are sweet treats, for example. So as you were talking about, we have the beginning, we have some tips on how to be successful, and then we had how to practice the poses, and then we go into some of the sweet treats. So it could be like a milkshake. Let's pretend to be a milkshake, and that is through a triangle pose. So your hand up is like the straw of a milkshake, for example, right? And then a cotton candy and a dancer's pose. Now, the benefit of our cards too is that there's usually 20 or 15 to 20 poses. So you can pull out as many as you like, right? And so the children can be playing games with them. They can be doing, picking out their favorite to share with each other. They can all have a pose, and then they have to do it in sequence, like a flow. They can do memory matching with the keyword, for example, and the pose. So there's lots of different ideas we have on our website in our shop of ways that you can play with the poses.
That's wonderful.
Thanks.
So what role has yoga and meditation played in your life and the life of your child?
Oh, I mean, it really is. I think that's the thing, is life, right? So yoga and meditation is a thread through my entire life. It's for me, it's a lifestyle, and it's important that we be yoga, however that looks for us. So I'm always learning and adapting and growing in terms of learning about the history of yoga, and the philosophy of yoga is really important, and understanding the different concepts of yoga. So some points, right? So I was telling you I was doing $5 classes in Sydney. So that was one thing I was, before having a child. And then I remember I went to New Orleans a few years ago when my daughter was young, and she was a very difficult, challenging child as a young one. And I went for the weekend, and I thought to myself, well, okay, here's the line in the sand. Like, I am not doing well at all. Like, as a parent, I am not doing well. Even with my background as a teacher and everything else, I still wasn't feeling great. And so I said, okay, well, when I go back home, I'm either going to meditate or I'm going to go to therapy or something. Like, something has to change. And I chose meditation, right? It's the cheapest option. So I got up, and from that next day, I made myself a little, mat to the spot. It was nothing fancy. And I did it every day for 3 years after that. And that saved my life. No kidding. Like, it made such a profound difference. And it didn't have to be complicated. It was literally getting up in the morning and sitting. I didn't have a pressure on myself for how long I was going to sit, what I was going to do. I have some mandala beads, so I go through those once or twice, and that's it. Another point later on after COVID, I remember as soon as we went into shutdown, I thought, this is it. It's time to come back to my meditation practice. Next day, boom, for a year after that or whatever it was. So I ebb and flow with my meditation. And also with breathing. So breathing is a thread that I've become recently obsessed with. Just so happens my daughter and my husband have a lot of sinus issues. So they have a hard time breathing, and they both had a lot of surgeries. And so I've read books, Breath by James Nestor and The Breathing Cure by Patrick McEwen. I'm just obsessed about the difference it can make of how we can breathe deeper. And what difference that makes, just taking deep breaths throughout the day. So it depends. My yoga meditation practice changes throughout the years according to what my needs are. And I love that flexibility to explore what it is I'm interested or what I need in that moment. So,
do you have a regular yoga practice?
I do. And I practice yoga. Yep. So I do that twice a week at home as a bare minimum. Yep.
That's great. What role did becoming a parent play?
Right. So the first books I was going to show you. So Sophia's Jungle Adventure was one of my first one that I wrote back when I took yoga teacher training. And this was an exploration of when I went to Costa Rica. So again, we're talking about travel, right? It's important for me to express myself through traveling. And so Sophia's Jungle Adventure was written before, but then coming through to now, I've written more books about, like, Elisabeth the Magnolia Fairy, books that are more about with my daughter and some of the challenges or issues that I see her going through. So it's changed. I went from more of a teacher writing children's books to now as a parent, relating more to what what educators and pediatric therapists are going through from a parenting point of view. So I'm able to share and empathize with not just as educators, but really understand what's under the surface of children and the issues that they're going through, especially the last couple of years with a lot of mental health. And I've seen that with my own daughter. So definitely has made, and you, as you said, like our goal is always trying to look at what are the different ways that we can creatively bring yoga and mindfulness to make it easy for everybody to bring this practice without having to transform their whole lives or their whole curriculum.
And what have the response been of the people that have done the yoga and meditation through the yoga cards in the books?
Oh, it's been incredible. It's been incredible. If you told me, 10 years ago or 11 years ago that I would be where we are now, I would never have believed you, like never, right? It was just an idea in my heart about writing books and sharing ideas. And it's been incredible. And I think that's where I've fed. I'm a people pleaser, I'm not gonna lie. And I love the community we've created and people's positive feedback. And it's extraordinary to hear, especially when you run an online business, right? You're often here behind, I'm sure you feel that too. You're at home and you're writing out to the universe and you send things out. But when you hear the feedback, especially when you're talking about, you get stories about people are petting their pets through meditation, and you hear the impact of the work that you're doing, it's incredibly rewarding, like incredibly. Like I can't even tell you, every day we receive emails. It's just, it's heart filling. It's hard to describe. I'm very fortunate for the work that we do.
How many people are working at Kids Yoga Stories now?
So we have a core team of 4 of us, and then I have an illustrator, an editor, a designer. So yeah, there's a couple handfuls, and we're all moms. So all moms working from home, working here and there, and we're all in different time zones. So we've got a team member in Portugal, and I'm on the East Coast in Boston, and we have a couple moms on the West Coast. So it's great. We kind of log in whenever works for us. It's awesome.
Oh, I also noticed that you have a lot of diversity in the kids that are portrayed in the cards. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Thank you for bringing that up. Again, it was a real passion of mine right from the get-go about having, again, because I'm Canadian, live in America, my husband's Australian, my parents are British. So it was really important to me. I lived and worked in Guatemala for a number of years. So initially the idea was 6 yoga kids, 3 girls and 3 boys from the 6 different continents. And then we added a 7th, May. She was from Japan. And then we've added Gabrielle, who's an African-American girl. So it was really important that we had a mix of cultures. And that is a thread through all of our cards, our books. We have even some of the characters. So for example, one that comes to mind, that was another journey. We went to, my family, when my daughter was 18 months, we went to Death Valley in California, which was an extraordinary experience. But, we have an African-American family through the story. So for example, we want to make sure that we're covering all cultures in our stories.
That's great. I think that's really important. The coloring books. You want to talk a little bit about the coloring books?
So we have a few. We have some initially that were mimicking the storybooks. And then more recently, I've been writing a lot more for the 3rd to 5th graders. And that's been really fun. So we have one up there called the Coloring Pages of Gratitude. And so we used phrases, positive affirmation phrases. My daughter has a tendency to be quite negative and has quite a low self-esteem. So that was one thing I remember. During that first summer in COVID, we were staying at it was the first time we'd left home, and we were staying in a little cabin up in Vermont for a couple of weeks, and we would sit outside and paint. And so we were painting these positive affirmations, and it was just a way for us to talk about these concepts in a relaxed, calm way. So those are really fun. I like those.
Yeah, I love the gratitude coloring book. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. What a nice way to start the day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Awesome.
Is there anything we missed?
Well, that sounds great. I love your work. It sounds really interesting about the pets, and I'm sure there's a lot of similarities to the work that we do. And at the end of the day, we're driving the same mission, right? It's having people be happy, healthy, and fully expressed, right? So we share that in common.
Yes, we do. Well, thank you so very much for this.
You're
This
welcome.
was great.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.